Okay, I would now like to turn to Senator Morrissey.
Morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My
morning.
bill before you is Senate Bill 108, abolishing long-term solitary confinement in the Commonwealth. Madam Chair, I would tell you at the outset that there are at least 4 people that wish to speak. I've told them that their time would be limited once I finish. To most of the members on this committee, you are familiar with SB 108. It was before you last year. I believe it passed on an 8-5-1 vote. It got weighed down in the House of Delegates because after it passed the Senate, there was a huge fiscal impact suggested by DOC. This bill comes before you now after a lot of study. My office, along with the chairman, Senator Vogel, the Virginia Solitary Coalition, and other legislators, visited DOC facilities during the off session. We're able to ask a lot of questions, and I believe we also were able to address the fiscal impact, if any. First of all, what this bill does is it abolishes long-term isolated solitary confinement in the Commonwealth of Virginia. No one may spend more than 15 days in solitary confinement during a 60-day period. And whilst in solitary confinement, they would have 4 hours of out-of-cell or out-of-cage time for recreation or some type of exercise. There are a number of sister states that have abolished solitary confinement in the Commonwealth, in our country, and they have been successful. Not only successful in helping those individuals who were in solitary confinement, but the fiscal impact decreased substantially. For example, Colorado closed a segregation facility built for 316 prisoners. After doing that, they saved $13.6 million in 2013 and 14 without any negative impact. Illinois closed Tama's Supermax in 2013, which almost everyone was isolated, saved $26 million a year. Mississippi closed a unit, almost 1,000 prisoners that were in isolated confinement. They saved $8 million a year. Again, no negative impacts. If an individual is placed in solitary confinement, the staff must take the following measures. Madam Chair, a medical and mental health evaluation is given during the first 24 hours, and then reasoning for keeping an individual in solitary must be provided every 48 hours. There will be exceptions for certain situations that will allow a person to stay in isolation. If an individual volunteers to be placed in there, and there are a number of reasons you can imagine why somebody might volunteer. If he's a threat to himself or others, and 3, if he is under investigation by a facility, a DOC facility, or staff. Again, I think I'm repeating some of myself from last year, this bill, and Madam Chair, perhaps you may allow some folks to testify, and then I'll remain here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator.
All right.
Would you want to bring speakers who
Yes.
are in favor of this bill and currently in the room? Please come forward.
Yes. Kim Bobo, she is the director of the Virginia Interfaith Center.
Good morning, Madam Chair and esteemed senators. I'm Kim Bobo, director of the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. Faith communities are united in their opposition to solitary confinement. Holding people for extended periods of time is torture. Yesterday, my staff delivered to all of your offices a list of all the faith communities that oppose solitary confinement. And we had a press conference with Virginia faith leaders calling for limits to the use of solitary confinement. They described the practice as torture and violation of Scripture and an affront to God. Around the country, there's been a move by agencies to pretend they aren't holding people in solitary by switching the names of what they call it. In Virginia, DOC claims it doesn't use solitary confinement. A few years ago, the practice of isolating people was switched to restrictive housing, and then they started calling it restorative housing. change of language isn't change of practice. Whatever you call it, isolating people for long periods of time is torture. The DOC claims it has implemented new approaches for reducing the use of solitary confinement. Perhaps. But frankly, pastors and family members tell us different. And the Department of Corrections October 21 report, so just 3 months ago, tells a different story as well. In fiscal year 2021, more than 5,000 people were put in isolation, 48% of them with mental health issues. The Department of Corrections report says that 1,445 people, our neighbors, spent 15 to 29 days in isolation. 1,748 people were in restorative housing, solitary confinement, for more than 30 days. Indeed, we believe this is torture. And so clergy and volunteer ministers and the Virginia Interfaith Center believe we need to do different. Hebrews 13:3 says, "Continue to remember those in prison as if you were together with them in prison, and those who are mistreated as if you yourselves were suffering." Virginia needs a policy from the General Assembly that will stop torture and reduce the use of solitary confinement. We urge you to vote for this bill. Thank you.
Colleagues, a motion on this bill would be to approve and refer to finance. This does have to go to finance. Okay. Motion has been made by Senator Mason, seconded by Senator Servell. The motion is to report and refer to finance. Clerk, please open the roll.
Ayes 8, no 6, 1 abstention.